I'm Claire Brissenden, a family practitioner from Trinity Chambers, and to celebrate International Women's Day and the theme of Accelerate Action, I'm very pleased to be joined today by Amanda and Anu from my chambers, who are solicitors who recently transferred to the bar. We're going to be discussing some of the issues that they've both faced in their careers as women. Now, I'd like to ask you some questions about that, if I may. So, starting with, what would you say were the most significant challenges that you've both faced in making this transition? How do you think the legal profession can accelerate action to support more women in making similar career moves?
I think for me it was the lack of information out there in terms of how to transfer. So I've been discussing with people that had previously instructed at Trinity about potentially transferring back. I did qualify as a barrister in 2000, fell into being a solicitor more for security than anything else. And then sort of later in my career now, I thought if I'm ever going to do it, this is probably the only time I'll get the opportunity. But just in terms of the information out there, I really struggled to ascertain how to do the application, get in touch with BSB, find out what the costs were involved, just the practical side of things. And then I think the other side of it was my own fear in my own head in terms of how will I adapt to this challenge? Is it too late for me now? As well, have I become sort of indoctrinated in what I would previously be doing? And can I get over that sort of imposter syndrome that comes with doing something for such a long period of time and then trying something different?
Absolutely. Amanda, what would you say?
Oh, I absolutely agree. I think that the wait when you make the application, before you actually get enough information to know that, this is what you need to do, and the length of time it takes for you to hear back from making the application can be quite daunting. Also, it's quite scary moving from your comfort zone, as Anu said, to something completely different where you have to have a completely different mindset in terms of what you do. I found that quite challenging, but it's been really useful to have support network in chambers, people who are there that you could just pick up the phone to, has been quite helpful.
That's good to hear. So in terms of your progress of your career, obviously, despite progress generally, the bar remains quite a male-dominated space, particularly in higher courts and leadership roles. What actions do you think should be prioritised to accelerate gender equality in advocacy and courtroom representation?
I think the first thing would be to look at how work is allocated, because the more senior you are, clearly the more high value work you will get. And it's important that when we're looking at that, we ensure that women are put in those positions where they can also be advanced for those very significant cases. A lot of firms and chambers can, of course, play an active role in this by looking at how they select barristers to do the work and chambers and things like that, and look at their policies, whether they have unconscious bias without realizing that they are particularly going for one set of personnel to deal with such level of work, rather than being open to giving a wider network of people the opportunity to grapple with the work that's available.
That's a fair point. Anna, what do you think?
I think Amanda's mentioned mentoring. I think that's really important. I think I was allocated a mentor and I shadowed for a good few months before joining Trinity. And that has really helped as well. My mentor keeps in touch with me, but also that person sort of championing on your behalf as well, and just getting everyone involved in the process rather than just feeling very isolated. And again, just tackling that sort of unconscious bias, and also just the microaggressions that you come across in day-to-day life as well. So, and I think I put something in here which is, I thought, is it silly or not? But my perception of what a lawyer looked like, or an advocate, obviously it's different in America where you have the sort of the dual, you look at suits and it's all very glamorous, and you've got these women, especially, and you've got women of colour as well that are in these really high profile roles, but then you go back to looking at something like Bridget Jones, which I love, but that archetypal image of Colin Firth being this bit of a uptight, stuffy, older gentleman as well, and that's your perception of what a barrister should look like and sound like as well, and just breaking down, I suppose, those sort of again, those subconscious ideas of what good looks like as well. Can it look like something different as well, and really advocating for the breadth of diversity that we've got available to us, and what we bring to the profession as well as women. Amanda's a mum, I'm a mum, we can multitask. anyone
Good
down the line as well. You know, I can do multiple things and manage my timetables. And we've come a later stage in our careers as well, which I think has meant that we bring a different skill set to the profession, because we have that wide range of experience that maybe, you know, when I was younger, if I'd gone straight into it, I might not have had as well. So I think being a mother has actually helped with that.
I totally relate to that. Talking systemically rather than necessarily within Chambers itself, but what do you think institutional changes could be in terms of whether it's law firms, the judiciary or Chambers itself? What do you think would have the most impact in accelerating action for women's equality at the bar?
I think we talked about this before. I think all three of us actually before we started this session, in terms of the way that cases are listed as well. So, you know, I'll go along to court and then turn up for a 10-minute hearing and then have to travel for 3 hours in total either way for that. Whereas, you know, managing that childcare arrangement, my children are older, so it's easy to manage now. But if I had a young family, that would be very difficult to manage as well, not knowing what time you're going to get home.
So what can be done, do you think?
So I think in terms of childcare, you know, there should be better wraparound care that's available. That's always been an issue, even when I was a solicitor, quite frankly as well. So, you know, having childcare that's available from maybe 7:30 in the morning till 6:30 at night as well, but it's also affordable. But just in terms of court listings as well, again, looking at that holistically as well, in terms of how that process works and how cases are put together. And actually our clerks have been amazing. I can't fault them in that way as well. They're very mindful of our diaries and our commitments, and if we need to block out things for childcare or holidays as well. So I don't have any complaints in that regard, but I think we're lucky in the Chambers, and I think that's why I was so attracted to come in here actually.
Are there any policies that you think, Amanda, that need urgent reform in respect of that?
I think one of the ones we probably need to look at again is going back to having remote hearings for shorter hearings. I think, as Anu said, having to travel for a short, 10-minute hearing, 1-hour hearing, it's just not efficient. There's a much more efficient way to deal with things. And if those shorter hearings could be by CVP, where it's timetabling or directions hearing, then it would be a way to ensure that you're able to meet all your responsibilities without dropping a ball. Because as you say, we juggle so many balls, but it would be easier to do it substantively if you have other major hearings longer than 3 hours, etc., being attended. It just saves a lot of people time and effort, and you can deal with multiple things at the same time. It did work. We did do it during the lockdown. We managed it, and we certainly can still do it again. And perhaps that's something that the court needs to look at to be able to support working parents.
There seems to be a resistance, though, doesn't there, to going back to CVP?
Absolutely. And I don't understand what the resistance is, because you're still getting the work done. Everybody's still available. You can get more done in time preparing for other cases to make sure that it's the efficiency of the system really helping the court to also flow well.
Absolutely.
I think for the judiciary as well, it's better for the judges to be able to timetable in that way. It's not just for the advocates that are involved.
Yeah, and also for the clients,
yes,
as long as they can access the technology, I suppose, in that regard.
Yeah.
So in terms of pay gap, I know it's an issue for everybody. It's something that people are very aware of. But studies have shown that female barristers still often earn less than their male counterparts. What do you think is needed to help close the gender pay gap at the bar? How can firms and clients and institutions play a role in accelerating that change, do you think?
Well, I'm going to say I don't think we have that problem, because our clerks are on it.
Yeah, we're lucky.
As well, and there's parity in terms of pay. But again, I don't think everyone's that fortunate, to be honest. I think in terms of those instructing barristers, again, like weighting people's worth and knowing who you're dealing with, and widening the scope of who you're willing to instruct as well, and paying them their worth, because often you will get more for your money in terms of instructing a solicitor. You would get more for your money for instructing a barrister as well. But again, that perception is that you're paying ridiculous amounts for this particular service, and you want a certain person of a certain ilk that looks a certain way to provide that service. Otherwise, you don't feel like you're getting your value for money. And again, I think it's that changing that perception
of what value is.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you got anything
transparency as well.
Yeah.
It would help if there is that opportunity for firms, chambers, etc., to actually have data about what the pay margins are for both men and women in their organizations. And if they see that there is a gap, what can they do to bridge that gap and to actively work towards ensuring that the gap is bridged?
Yeah, absolutely, it's a good point. Something that I know that you've both benefited from is mentorship. I know it's important to both of you in that regard. What role do you think that mentorship and sponsorship play in accelerating women's success in the legal profession? And how do you think we can encourage more senior figures, not just female, but male, to actively support the next generation of women barristers?
Mentoring is a big thing for me. I'm a big advocate of mentoring. I've got so many mentors in dealing with different aspects of my life. And I've also had sponsors as well who have been able to actively put me in positions that I needed to be and have called my name in rooms that I'm not in. And those people are important because sometimes self-doubt and fear can cripple you. And if you have people that say you can do it and can support you and give you the tools that you need to do it, it's extremely important. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of mentors within Chambers, even before I joined Chambers actually, and also externally, who have been there to support my career journey throughout. And I think it's important for us to give our time, no matter how little, to be able to support the next generation of lawyers. I think sometimes it just takes somebody saying to you that you can do it and to support you in doing it, for you to actually believe that you can, because it's easy for us to get in our own head. I know, because I've been there with my transfer journey. There are times when I thought, I probably won't do it. And there are people who have been in my ear for I don't know how many years. Every time it's been brought up, you've got to do it, don't leave it. And it is important to have those people. The sponsors is a bigger thing in America, not quite so here. But I think it's also important that you have a sponsor. Sponsors are people that actually create those opportunities for you. It's not like mentors. And I think it's important that we start to embrace sponsorship as well and be that main advocate for someone to get them to the next stage of their career.
Yeah, it's really important. And then what do you think?
I totally agree. I think there's some more structure around it would be great as well. As I was previously a solicitor, as we've spoken about already, and I was quite active with the in-house committee. I was chair of that committee for a few years. And they, at the time when I became in-house, I felt very isolated, and they helped me find a mentor, and I'm still being mentored by that person even now, even though he's a solicitor and I'm no longer a solicitor. All my mentors have, funnily enough, been male. None of them, informally, I suppose, like, we've had conversations with people that I aspire to be like, or peers in terms of, but who I would call my actual mentors have been ex-managers that have been male. And the current one that I have is also male as well, and they've been the biggest advocates for me.
Do you think it would have made any difference if they'd been female, or would you have had a different experience?
I'm not sure. I can't say. I think they've helped me sort of look for opportunities, whereas I maybe wouldn't have beforehand. And I think, again, going back to that imposter syndrome and women in any sort of career as well, that self-doubt that you have as well, they're more likely to grab those opportunities, whereas maybe, I'm not saying all women, but some women wouldn't have, and myself wouldn't have been that confident to go for opportunities, and they're just saying, so don't have any fear, just do it as well. So it's benefited me in that way. But and I think the world is changing as well. So, we talk about women having the childcare responsibilities. I think it's the landscape is changing as well. And again, men being advocates for the family dynamic, not just women as well, in terms of taking on responsibility for those sort of childcare arrangements, that would help.
I was going to come on and talk about that actually. Obviously the demands of the bar can make work-life balance particularly challenging. Obviously we've all got children, we know how that can be. When you are juggling career and family, it can make it very difficult. What do you think needs to change in order to create a more sustainable career path for women in advocacy? What practical changes do you think could happen?
I think we've touched on the dealing with virtual hearings, and I think another focus probably needs to be, I think Anu was going to touch on childcare costs, because it is
extortionate.
It is extortionate. And finding the right childcare, choosing one can be quite challenging, because you need to be sure that the place will look after your child, and you have to be comfortable to leave your child there. But it is expensive. And I remember when my son finished at nursery, they send you a statement to see how much you've paid for childcare for the time that they've been at that particular nursery. And it was incredible to see how much we had spent in 5 years. You think, it is a small fortune.
Preparing you for university.
Exactly. And that in itself can be quite challenging for a lot of women. And that in itself could lead to a lot of women giving up their careers as a result of weighing the balance between how much it's going to cost to look after your child than actually going back to work. So it is important that there is that, I appreciate that there is the free 15 hours, free 30 hours, etc. But not everybody qualifies for that as well. So perhaps there needs to be consideration for how childcare can be more sustainable, shall I say, like in other jurisdictions where childcare is a bit more easier and affordable.
I agree. Anna, what do you think?
I think for me, the big thing, again, like I am very fortunate, my children are a lot older now, but if I'd made this transition a few years earlier, I think I would have found it very challenging, but just also I would have been really misinformed in terms of earning potential, which is one thing that really put me off coming to the bar as well. And also just the regular income that you're receiving as well, that security blanket you have, and that perception of security being a solicitor. But actually, the market is still just as volatile. You're subject to legal aid changes, cost regime changes, and things like that as well. But again, it looks like a secure profession. You feel like you're getting a regular income, whereas I think actually what would help in the bar is having better funding available for people that don't have that regular income, and having sort of maybe some sort of, not necessarily to say supplement that cost of it, but some concessions in place where you could potentially pay not within the 28 days, or you could have some sort of a longer period to do that as well. What else could be available? Also, I think a massive barrier is in terms of just things like the cost of wearing smart clothes as well. I was at an event this morning for SmartWorks, and one of their initiatives is providing clothes for women going back into work who have had a bit of a career break as well, and having that paid for by this charity organisation, but also providing mentoring, support and coaching. But I think it's really important to know that there is other ways out there to find those funding arrangements as well. What else can be done to help pay? Is there any way to supplement that income as well? What other opportunities are there as well? It's a big thing.
That's a really good point.
Even the cost of I knew that I'd have to pay for practicing certificates. I did the solicitor one, but then that was going to overlap with potentially paying for the barristers one, and then you have to pay for other costs like insurance, and again, just having a bit more transparency. But then on the flip side, if someone's saying to you, well, actually, this is what your earning potential will be, this is what you're going to get paid as well, and if you need a little bit of help along the way, this is what we can do to support you.
Thank you very much for that. That was really informative. I think the legal profession has certainly come a long way in terms of gender equality, but there's still significant work to be done, whether it's ensuring fair work allocation, as we spoke about earlier, closing the pay gap, or creating more sustainable career paths. The key to accelerating change lies in greater transparency, in proactive sponsorship and mentorship, as we've spoken about, but also institutional change, making practical steps to make it easier for women in law. The more we talk about these issues, the more we discuss, the more we demand change, I really do think the faster we will see some progress.